So this is my baby male control deck. 1 copy of the leader. 4 Android 17, turning the tide. 4 Vegeta, ready to rumble. 4 Android 18, let the battle begin. 4 Gohan, baby's minion. 4 SS3, Goku, overflowing spirit. 4 Kibito Kai's attendant. 4 Gowasu, manipulative supremacy. 4 Goku, striving to be the best. 4 Tragedy overground. 4 Chill's army reinforcements. 3 Janemba, wicked agent of destruction. 3 SS Gotenks absolute unison. And 3 SS4 Goku, protector of Earth. 1 baby Hachiyak. And 1 planet Tuffle. So the first thing, the mill control part of the deck is Gowasu along with Janemba, wicked agent of destruction. Individually these cards are good by themselves. They can give you control by them, a certain form of control by themselves. But when you combine them, you get even way more control. But the main thing, I just like the idea of I had the space. I'm like, yeah, let me just throw in Janemba just because it has synergy with Gowasu. Plus, this also adds an extra draw engine, so that's another reason to play this card. Because when you use it, you get to draw. Granted, your opponent gets to draw too, but if you combine it with Gowasu, you get to control what they get from that. So that's much better. If your opponent's going to draw, you rather choose what they draw, right? Right? That's the idea of control. You control, not your opponent, not random number generator, not the fates, not God, right? You control. So Gowasu has the active main ability. Once per turn, look at up to 3 cards from the top of your opponent's deck and place them back in any order you want. So you get to manipulate the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. That's very powerful. It's almost like manipulating your opponent's life, or manipulating your opponent's energy, or manipulating your opponent's hand, right? The ability to, choose and make decisions when it comes to what your opponent can and can't do, that is control, right? So, since this is a baby deck, right? It's automatically it's a control deck. Why not add more, right? So this will give you more control than you normally would have. Alright, so with Gowasu, the most basic thing you want to do with it is you want to make it hard for your opponent to draw battle cards, right? Because battle cards are typically the cards that your opponent can play to try to do you damage. Some battle cards have counterattack skills, or they're blockers, or they have counterplay effects, or they have a permanent, like a floodgate or something. And that could be a problem. Or they're as powerful as Android 17, turning the tide, right? Which could literally turn the tide in your favor, right? Win you the match. Or something as powerful as Baby Hachiyak, right? So you don't want your opponent to have these good cards. So you're going to use Gowasu to make sure they don't, right? Or at least make it really hard for them to do so. And of course, Gowasu's effect is not a hard once per turn. So you can play multiple copies of him because he doesn't have unique or anything like that. So if you have 2 of them in play, for example, you can use his effect twice. But obviously, it's a little redundant to use both at the same time when nothing happened other than, you just arranged the top 3 cards of the deck. So that's why you want to combine, if you're going to use 2 or more, right, you want to combine it with Janemba, because Janemba will do something. So you'll use Gowasu to manipulate the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, and then trigger Janemba's Wicked Agent of Destruction ability, which is the +0 active main ability, where you and your opponent draw a card, and then your opponent takes a card from the top of the deck and puts into the drop. So obviously, you'll let your opponent draw a card, which you don't want it to be a good card, like a battle card. Negates extra cards. You don't care if your opponent gets that. Your main goal is to give your opponent as many extra cards as possible, because extra cards typically don't have combo power, so that's one factor. Another thing is you don't want extra cards don't tend to deal damage unless we get more extra cards that do deal damage. That'd be nice, right? Burn. so you don't have to worry about extra cards, right? You know, they're not that much of a threat. Like, there are some good extra cards. There are problems, but not always. You don't care if your opponent gets a negate, like a Dimension Magic, Flying Nimbus, or Violent Rays, or something like that. You don't care because you know what they're going to do with it. They're going to use it. As soon as you attack, they're going to use it. So that's already a neg, right? So let them have their negates. It don't matter. You're going to force it out of their hands anyway, just by playing the game, right? By attacking. But you don't want them to have battle cards, right? So you're going to use Gowasu and Janemba to make sure they don't get battle cards. And then, of course, because the way this deck operates, we got some counter plays, we got some counter attacks, and we got some unisons that have the ability to, remove battle cards from the field, as well as we have Tragedy Overground. So we have ways to clear the board if our opponent did manage to still establish a board. Like, if they were able to get a couple battle cards on the field, well, we'll use our cards to get rid of them, right? So we'll get rid of them, and then after that, we'll make sure Gowasu does what he does best and make sure your opponent doesn't get another battle card for a long time. Which is the idea, right? You want to control the battle as well as you want to control the time. So the leader, when you play the leader into your leader area, you automatically can play Planet Tuffle from your deck. This is a 51 card deck, by the way. So you play Planet Tuffle, and automatically your deck will be 50 at that point. So you start off with the field. The field card has a permanent where it makes all your 5 cost or less counter play cards, counter skill cards cost 1 less to play. So this Vegeta will cost 3 to play. Android 18 will cost 3 to play. Gohan Baby's Mania will cost 2 to play. And armies, Chill's Army's Reinforcement and Goku Overflowing Spirit, they already cost 2. They don't get reduced in cost, so you're paying 2 for them regardless. But the other ones, at least they do lower in cost, so at least you're paying a minimum of a maximum of 3 energy in order to counter attack or counter play. So there's that. And then the leader, when it attacks, you draw a card. When you have 4 less life, you draw 2 cards and awaken. So a lot of draw power there, so that's nice. Right? Has the Overlord ability, which we have one servant in here, which is Gohan's baby minion. So there is at least one target for that effect. So, which can be good. But the irony is, though, we're mainly going to bounce Gohan back to our hand with Kabito Kai's Attendant. Obviously, we have the ability to loop and reuse most of our counter plays and attacks. So gotta have that full control, right? Just constantly countering. Who doesn't like that, right? Has the auto of when this card attacks, draw a card, so more to draw. So you could potentially draw 3 cards a turn if you use your Overlord, which will let you draw 2 cards by putting your Gohan's Baby Mini at the bottom of your deck. And when you attack, draw a card. So a lot of drawing in the deck. Active main once per turn. Look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck. Add up to 1 mono blue card with a counter skill among them to your hand. Place the remaining cards at the bottom of your deck in any order. Then choose 1 card in your hand and place it at the bottom of your deck. So this gives you the ability to, control your hands. Cycle your hand so you can get certain key cards, especially if you're trying to get your hands on Overflowing Spirit Goku, for example. So you can use him to reuse the Goku Protector Earth and go to the Absolute Unison and just abuse them over and over again to get board control, and then extra turns, obviously, especially with Goku. He'll definitely get you extra turns. And then the field card, active main once per turn. Add 1 card from your life to your hand. Then choose 1 card in your hand and place it at the bottom of your deck. So this obviously can help yourself awaken. among other things, but we're not really using it for that. But that is an option. But we're really just using it to just make these counter plays cheaper, which is nice to have things cost less. And since they're ready for, they're ready. Well, they cost less, which is good. Kabuto Kai can bounce any of your battle cards back to your hand, so that's not a problem. And of course, you want to be able to protect him and keep him on the field long enough. It won't be too hard since we do have Ready Rumble. Vegeta Ready Rumble, which not only can negate an attack, it's also a blocker, and has a floodgate ability. That when you play this card, your opponent can't attack for the turn unless they place one card from their energy into their drop area. So that's going to really make it hard for your opponent to really want to attack, because they'll lose energy, which can be a big problem for them, because it makes it harder for them to play bigger, better cards. So they might not want to attack, and even if they do, you got, Vegeta is a blocker, so that's extra nice. We have Gohan, Baby's Minion, counter attack, negate an attack, play this card. Servant, so it'll be 25k, and auto, when you play this card, your opponent can't attack for the turn unless they choose one card from their hand and place it at the bottom of their deck. So that right there, some hand control. And remember, we're already manipulating how our opponent draws, and if we combine it with Janemba, we're milling out, we're getting rid of good cards in the process, and just keep making it where our opponent's draw will always be bad, which means at some point their hand's going to stop being good and start being bad, right? Which is the ultimate goal, because I was thinking of the fact that I noticed people tend to talk about they tend to draw bad, which is why they lost or something like that. And it's like, oh, that's good to know. Because I'll take advantage of that if people tend to lose because they draw bad, which means they don't always have the optimal hand. Well, that's good. I'll make sure your hand is even more non-optimal, and take advantage of that, and get some free wins off of that basic scenario. Familiar with this from Magic, because Magic that tends to happen. I actually use this strategy in Magic as well. Yes, I'm a blue mage, but the idea of control. That's why when I saw this effect, I'm like, oh man, this, and then combined with Janemba, like, oh, if you use these two, it creates that I feel it's called lantern control or something like that. There's like this artifact where you and your opponent both mill, but the idea is that I combine it with something else. I forgot what the other card was. It's been a while since I played Magic, obviously, but I still remember most of the tactics of like trying to control the milling to make it where my opponent mills the good stuff, because what I want them to draw is lands, and I don't want them to draw anything else. I definitely don't want them to draw creatures. If they draw instances, I could care less, unless they're like I'm against a red deck or something. Then those spells can be burn cards, right? But typically, it's like creatures. I definitely want to hit creatures. I don't care if they get anything else. As long as if they're getting lands and anything else, I'm good. It's creatures I don't want them to get. So I'm using the same concept here, which is I don't want my opponent to get battle cards. Because if they have battle cards, that means they can battle, right? They can attack you. They can defend. They can do things. And they wouldn't put battle cards in their decks that, don't do things, right? That don't help them, win the game, right? So we already have, since I'm playing blue, I'm already very defensive, we got counter attacks, counter negates, I got floodgate abilities, so I'm pretty good defense-wise. But I need to make sure that my opponent is not even putting up a threat, right? Not putting up a fight, so I don't have to defend as much, right? You always want to reduce how much you have to defend. That way you can focus on just attack all day until you win, right? Which is what we love to do. So if the deck is already very defensive, then there's the control element to it, and I'm just making it even more controlling and far worse and more a nightmare for my opponent, which is great, right? Always make the game easier for yourself, harder for your opponent, remember? Alright, so there's that. Android 18, she Counter plays, I don't. A thing about me is that I don't play counter plays that much. Ironically, I mean I do play, counter spells, counter, counter traps and Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff like that. But they're good cards. Why not, right? I can use them. It's not too hard to use. That's the thing. They're not, those types of attacks are not too hard to use. It's just that, especially in this game, I prefer not to play that route. I'd rather do let my opponent play and then just beat them at their best, right? Strategy. I don't want to stop them from playing the game and make it where, like, every time they try to do something, I stop them. Every time they try to do something, I stop them. And, that will get annoying after a while. Of course, there's people out there that love that strategy, so hey, teach their own. You do you. Enjoy not letting your opponent play. But even though this strategy obviously is the same thing, it's literally not. I'm trying to get to the point where it's hard for my opponent to play. Therefore, I'm not letting them play the game, right? But again, this is just the strategy of the deck, so no surprise there. There are other decks I'd rather use. I'd rather use other strategies to win, but this is a strategy that can win you matches, so why not share this concept, right? So she's counter plays and she's a blocker. The selling point for me, ironically, is that she's a blocker more so than a counter play. If she was just a counter play, it's like, I'll find something else. It's the fact that she's a blocker with counter play. So I was like, you know what? I'll give you a shot. Plus, she's Android 18. Who doesn't like Android 18? So counter play this card. Then, if the battle card being played has an energy cost of 4 or less, it is placed at the bottom of the opponent's deck instead of being played. And permanent, if your leader card is Android, blah, 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 Heron, you get to reduce her cost down to 1. But we are not. But fortunate enough, which was part of why, another reason why I'm using her, is because I know that I can reduce her cost by 1 through Planet Tuffle, so that already makes her a 3-drop. So it already makes her a little bit more cost effective. 3 costs or less counter plays or counter attacks are preferred. Which is why it's really nice that we can make Vegeta cheaper, we can make her cheaper, which is all gravy. Plus Gohan cheaper, which definitely helps with the Kabuto Kai and Gohan play, where you bounce Gohan back to your hand, play him to Floodgate, right? And also protect Kabuto Kai, and then just keep bouncing them, keep that loop going up and down, as they say, right? So, gotta love that. Been using this broken strategy for a long time. Kabuto for the win. Already mentioned, Gohan's ability. Your opponent tries to attack, they have to get rid of a card and put it in the bottom deck. We got Goku Overflowing Spirit. Negates an attack, the leader is mono blue. And you choose one of your blue unison cards in your unison area or drop area and return to your hand. And this is how we'll be able to reuse, our unisons. In case we want to, use their effects more than once. Like Gotenks has a really good -3 ability, which we'll get to soon. Kabuto Kai, of course, mentioned already. You can bounce any of your battle cards back to your hand in order to choose one of your opponent's battle cards, 3 costs or less, and bounce it to their hand. So it has a way to help us control the board. Putting something back to our opponent's hand, right? That way they have to play it again in order to have it on the field. And if they try to play it again and you just so happen to have the energy, then you can drop Android 18 and put it at the bottom of the deck instead, right? And just have that bit of humor. So the fact that you put something back in your opponent's hand and then you counterplayed it, right? Very familiar strategy from my draw counterplay deck, where I bounce creatures back to my opponent's hands with like unsummon or cards of that nature, and then counter cancel it or negate. What is it called? It's called negate. I think that's literally the name of the card. Yeah, negate. Where I can negate the card and negate the summoning of the creature. So that's synergy. So bounce stuff to the hand and then counter it. So I already mentioned Gowasu, what you can do with him, and just in general being able to manipulate. Like, he's definitely one of my blue tech cards that I've definitely been playing around with. definitely expect to see him, you know, a lot in future builds because he's just inherently good. Just especially, imagine if they had different versions of him in different colors, like red, green, and blue and stuff. I mean, red, green, and stuff. Yellow, definitely would be using them because his effect is too strong. Just the ability to manipulate opponent's draw is too strong, and you know your opponent is always going to draw. So this is definitely something you want to have control. Your opponent's going to draw for their turn, then they're going to draw for their leader. So being able to control, you know, what 2 cards they're going to get every turn is just important. And you know they're always going to charge a card as energy on average, so you know that's a factor as well. So he's a floodgate. You know, that's where I look at it. He's a floodgate. He's a anti-draw floodgate. Now imagine him and Black Mass saying these are like the different concepts I had. It's like, damn, put him along with all the other, like, even if you don't main deck him, I definitely recommend him as a side deck card at least, because putting him on the field along with Black Mass Sane and, you know, other floodgate like cards, just too much control. And he's the one, you know, he's only one specified blue, right? So you can easily tech him into any deck. So don't be surprised you see him in other decks besides blue, because that effect's too good. So if I can't splash him in other decks, I will. Then we got Goku's driving to be best. Barrier, permanent. Your opponent's battle cards 2 costs or less can't attack, which is, you know, obviously useful. And Tragic Overground has the 4 costs or higher effect, so combine that with Goku's driving to be the best, and it'll limit your opponent to 3 drops. So, you know, when it comes to attacking and doing anything, right? So, Tragic Overground is you're going to definitely be hard casting this. We don't have any other way of cheating out except for hard casting it. And we don't have ramp in here, so you will be playing this when you have 9 energy on turn 9 type stuff. But we have ways to stall and stuff like that, so that's not difficult. Which is why I'm like, yeah, I'm going to throw it in there. It's a board wipe, as well as, you know, floodgate. And it works with Goku, so why not, right? Might as well go all in on the brokenness. So, permanent. This card can't be removed from your battle area by the skills of your opponent's battle cards. Second permanent, when your opponent plays a battle card with energy cost 4 or more, it is placed into the owner's energy area in rest mode instead. So essentially, a floodgate counter, so to speak. So if your opponent tries to play something, well, this will take care of it for you, so you don't have to waste time, you know, trying to respond to it, you know, with other stuff like her, you know, she does 4 or less. You know, this does 4 more, so you don't even have to use her. You could just let Tragic Overground do its thing, obviously. So the less stuff your opponent has on the field, the better. That way you only have to focus on leaders and unisons when you're playing against your opponent, which is the main goal. You rather try to stop 2 attacks per turn than try to stop 3, 4, 5, 7 attacks per turn, right? And then it's auto. When you activate this card, choose all of your opponent's battle cards, ignore and bury it, and place them into their owner's energy area in rest mode. This is ramping your opponent, obviously, but who cares? Your opponent won't be able to do too much offensively. They'll have enough energy to be very defensive and play a lot of defensive cards, but they won't be able to be as offensive as much as possible, as much as they would like, which is great, which is what you want. You want to make attacking harder on your opponents, playing battle cards harder on your opponents. So that's that. Then chose Army Reinforcement. Really good negate. Yeah, this replaces Dimension Magic, right? Especially in this build. Dimension Magic, of course, is still good because of the untapping 2 energy and whatnot. But the thing is that you're untapping the 2 energy for the purpose of being able to play something else. The cool thing about this card is that, one, you can play for free if you have 5 or less life, right? By taking a life, adding a card from your life to your hand, and play this for free. You'll negate an attack, and then you make a token, and the token will be a blocker, so that could stop another attack. Dimension Magic can only stop 1 attack. Granted, untapping 2 energy could help you potentially play another negate, and stop an attack. But again, you still need another card for that. This card by itself can stop 2 attacks, so it's better in that regards. Another thing is that if your opponent decides they don't want to attack or they have no more attacks, you'll have a 10k token, so that's at least something you can swing at your opponent, swing back at your opponent with later on. Or you could just not even block with a token. No one says you have to block with a token, right? You can just, you'll have the token and the token status. Now the token disappears, and it'll lose the blocker skill, of course, at the end of the turn, but it'll still be there, so you have a 10k token that you can use to attack your opponent with, which, it's good. It's good, it's good, it's good. So it has a lot of versatility in it. And, like I said, 5 or less, you can take a card from your life, add it to your hand to play this. Of course, you use this can help you self-awaken in case your opponent brings you down to 5 life and they don't want you awaken. But they're like, all right, I attack a unison or a battle card, and you'll be like, all right, well, I'll play this, take a life. Now I have the ability to awaken because now I'm at 4, and I was able to defend something and whatnot. So if your opponent attacks, they're just going to help you, trigger the self-awakening. So it's good in those regards. The fact that you can use multiple copies, that's another thing. So if you have 2 of these, then you can literally stop 4 attacks, and you could do it literally just for 2 life. Stop 4 attacks for 2 life, worth it. So worth it. Which is why this is bullshit that these cards exist, but I am a fan, but still. Watch my, go listen to my podcast video about free play negates the problem. Because they definitely are a problem. But that's the point of this deck, is to be the problem. Right? To fully go into the problem. Make your opponent to regret ever playing against this deck ever. Janimba, of course, we got the both players draw, your opponent mills a card after they draw. Effect has the +1 ability where this card gets a critical, which, obviously good effect. It'll come in handy to prevent your opponent from adding cards to their hands. So you could literally just focus on swinging with Janimba, right? Give him the crit, swing with him as your main attacker, and using Guasu as well as your counterplay cards to, control your play. On counterattacks, counterplay cards to control what your opponent tries to do, while you just keep critting them, making it where they're not adding anything good from their life to their hand, as well as they're not adding anything from their deck to their hand. So you're targeting 2 locations where your opponent typically will be able to get resources. They're hitting 2 important resources: their life and their deck. With these 2 cards, so that's why this little basic combination is just busted. Which is surprising that I don't see many other people using this strategy, but okay. Hopefully someday they will, and hopefully they'll give me the credit for it, right? Doubtful. -2 active main / battle ability. If your opponent has 15 or less cards in the deck, this card gets 15k power and triple strike for the turn. So it could be a 30k triple strike, so it can be a finisher. That's a thing, right? So that's nice to have that. So it could be a finisher. So we have some triple strike in the deck. We got Gold Tank's Absolute Unison, dual attack, blocker, 20k. -2 ability to draw 2 cards, gotta keep that hand nice and thick, so that's nice to have that effect. And it has the -3 ability to choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring bear, which is very important, and place them at the bottom of their deck, which is also very important. Because it's good against any deck that overwhelms or any deck that prefers cards in the drop. This also can help prevent sparking, sparking 5 and stuff like that, but not allowing stuff to go to the drop per se. But it depends, right? It depends on how you're playing the deck. And since it has dual attack, and it's a blocker, so you can attack with it, restand it with the dual attack ability, and keep it in active mode, so you can use it to block, so you can attack and block. Keep your defenses up while still, applying pressure. So that's really nice synergy there. And of course, you can reuse them with Goku Overflowing Spirit. And then we have SS4 Goku Protector of the Earth Auto. When this card is played during your opponent's next turn, they can't attack with battle cards unless they choose one of their other battle cards with an energy cost 2 or more and place it at the bottom of their deck. This only affects battle cards, so your opponent's Unison and Leader are immune, so you still have to stop those attacks. So keep that in mind. Has the -1 ability where you draw 2 cards and then take 1 card from your hand, place it at the bottom of your deck. Then it has the -2 ability. Choose all your opponent's battle cards, ignore and bear, which is very important, right? And return them to the owner's hand. Not exactly where you want them to be, but it's, you know, it's not bad for, you know, it's not bad, you know, for the time being, right? So bounce it back to the hand. And at times you do have the ability to potentially do this twice before you have to bounce it back to your hand. It's a 15k, might as well swing with it after you play it, so you can try to get some damage through. And of course, you can reuse it with Goku Overflowing Spirit, so you can keep getting that auto every turn, the -2 ability. Then we got Baby Hachiak. Counter attack, if you have 3 or more energy, negate the attack, play this card, your opponent can't attack for the turn. So that right there just automatically gives you another turn, right? Second permanent, if your leader card is mono blue, which it is, you can choose one other card in your hand, discard it in order to play this card for free. So you already got a free negate / floodgate ability. So for free, you can get an extra turn, and it's a 40k. And first permanent, if this battle card would leave the battle area, move it from the game instead. So that's the thing. And yeah, that's the end of the video. Oh no, sorry. And Android 17 turning tide, I forgot to mention him earlier, but he should be obvious. So he's one of your main win cons, you know, like your most basic win con. I mean, you can win without him, but you know, better to have and not need than to need and not have, right? So he's your go-to win con board right there, because what you do is you play him because he has the auto. When you play this card, choose all cards in your hand and your opponent's hand, and all battle cards in your opponent's drop area, and shuffle them back into your opponent's, you know, into the decks. Which means you will have no cards in your hands, and your opponent won't have no cards in their hands. And he has deflect, and he's a 30k crit. So when you swing with him to your opponent's leader, since your opponent has no cards in their hands, they're not going to be able to combo. So they're going to have to take the hit, and since it's critical, they won't add it to the hand, which is nice, right? Don't give your opponent resources. And then you can swing with your leader for game, because more likely by the time you do this, your opponent only has 2 life, and then swinging with this and then swinging with the leader is more than enough to win you the game right there and then. So that's why it's a win con. You know, basic obvious one. So there's that, and that's the end of the video.